5 seconds, someone in the United States develops Alzheimer's or a related dementia. Today on Vital Living Forum, we will have the opportunity to talk with those who are affected by brain changes and hear their stories. And joining us today are Art, Jason, Lucy, and Nick. Welcome. Thank you. And also joining us is Peggy Bargeman. And Peggy, you are an advocate for individuals with dementia. Thank you all for being here today.
Thank you.
Yes. So let's start about talking about your life before you started to experience brain changes. And Art, we're going to go ahead and start with you.
Sure. I was a professor at UCF in the field of special education and worked with different individuals with brain conditions. And so now I'm experiencing it myself.
And Jason, what about you? What are your experiences?
I was a nuclear engineer for 10 years in the Navy, and then I was a naval intelligence officer. When I started having personality changes is where mine started out.
Those were the first changes?
Those were the first changes, yeah, were the personality changes.
Lucy, what about you? How did you notice? Was it you or was it a family member?
Well, I noticed that I wasn't remembering things like I used to do. And I would run into a room, and I did a lot of crying because I didn't know nothing about Alzheimer's. And so I did a lot of crying. And then I remembered that my grandma was like this. I said, oh my goodness, it's the same thing. And back then we didn't know anything about this thing. She didn't get any medical help like she should have. And so I left Jamaica, went to England. And that's when I really found out that something was wrong. I went to my doctor. And like I said, I did a lot of crying. But then one day I went before the mirror, the big mirror, and I looked at myself in the mirror. And I said, what's the matter with you? And I said, and don't you answer me either. I said, what are you crying about? And that's when I talked to the children and said, I need to go to my doctor because you have your own doctors over there, whatever. I said, I need to go and talk to my doctor. And I went. And that's the beginning of how they found out.
And sitting next to you, Lucy, is Nick. Nick, tell us about your experiences.
Well, I want to say that I am the third generation of people with cognitive issues. It was my paternal grandmother, my father, and myself. And when I started, I worked for Vitas for many, 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 many years, and I loved it. And I started to have definite cognitive issues, like I couldn't find my way home, things like that. And then that's when the keys were taken away for the car and things like that. And that truly broke my heart, do you know what I mean? Because that was my life, like that was my car, how do I get around? But now through the time, I just take life as it is in front of me. And I thank God for the things that I do have and don't worry about the things that I don't have. And I'm filled with love with my husband, and life is good. Life is good, and we have a good life, and that's all I need to have. Do you know what I mean? And I have friends and things like that, and that's all you need in life.
So let me ask, what are you doing differently now with the cognitive impairment that you're experiencing, Art?
You know, it's interesting you asked that. I guess I focus more on trying to recall throughout the day everything that I've done. And fortunately, I have a very caring wife of 47 years who reminds me, no, honey, you did this. And I've found being patient with that because she can keep me up to date with whatever's going on through the day.
What about you, Jason?
I'd agree with him. I mean, we just celebrated our 28th anniversary, my wife and I, and I don't know where I'd be without her. She's definitely the one that keeps things going. I went from being very much in control to now it's kind of, I have to second guess myself at everything, but it's definitely been her holding things together.
And Peggy, what would you say as you hear their stories about the experiences and what alerted them? What do people need to know?
Well, I think one of the things that I heard just now, and I think is so important, is the focus on capability and not disability.
Yes.
What can I do? And Art, you immediately said that, and how, and then if I'm struggling with one area, who are the support? What support team do I have? And how much more successful you can live with the memory impairments or cognitive impairments you're experiencing if you have that support in place.
Yes.
That helps you to do that. But I just have to really stress the importance of capabilities.
And living. Truly living with the dementia or the brain changes that you're experiencing. Nick?
I do, for myself, I stay active. I truly stay active. And I walk the dog as much as I can. There are times she looks at me like, no, not again. and we do that, and I do that. And then to get the blood to my brain, I do Zumba every single day. And that's really good, and the goal is to get the blood to the brain. So I take care of that. And I try to eat a pretty healthy diet, and so there might be some chocolates and Hershey Kisses in the closet, but they haven't all been found yet. And things like that. So, but again, my life is, here's what God has given me today, and I am going to enjoy it to the best of my ability for
Jason?
today.
Yeah, one of the things with my particular form of MCI is I'm very young. I'm 47. I have a 16-year-old son at home. I was first diagnosed when I was 42. Probably had it way before that, but I have, my 16-year-old keeps me busy. I try to do things with him. I have a 27-year-old who also lives in the area that we kind of do things together. So getting out is the biggest thing. If I'm just sitting around at home, I'm going to do much worse than. That's what I like about Brain Fitness Club. It's one of the best things about Brain Fitness Club. Even though I'm, quite a bit younger than most of the other people there, it's getting out and getting out with people, the socialization, and the challenges that they have. And then from the group, I've also branched out to physical therapy with UCF students. So it's definitely blossomed into something that's, for me, it's done wonders.
And Peggy, the Brain Fitness Club, which I know we'll talk about a little bit more, but that it's to keep people active.
Right. So we offer programming that does cognitive exercise, physical exercise, and socialization, which you just heard is so important to have others that you can share your story with and talk.
It's interesting to know that there's older people that have such good pull skills.
Yeah. Lucy?
Well, I tell you something about myself. I didn't know that nurses could have this thing. So I did a lot of crying because I didn't understand, because nurses not supposed to have a brain problem. Your patients are depending on you. So I cried and I cried and I cried, and one day I stood before the mirror crying. I was the only one at home. And the person in the mirror said, "What are you crying for?" So I stopped and I thought about it. And I said, "I don't know." I said, "Well, if you don't know what you're crying for, shut up your mouth." And
Now, Lucy, we have a couple of nurses up here, correct?
We all are.
No,
And
Peggy.
it makes you wonder what happened to us at work that we all got cognitive issues.
So the person in the mirror said, if you don't know what you're crying for, shut up your mouth and get on with your life. And I stopped and I thought about it. Praise the Lord, I was the only one at home.
Now, Lucy has shared how she has, I guess, come to terms and accepted the diagnosis. Art, how have you been handling that?
Well, it's interesting. I have a very helpful wife who I mentioned earlier who would point out limitations to me and where I need help. And the biggest difficulty, I think, for men, and I speak for most of my brothers, we avoid asking for help. We're not supposed to need any help. And it's amazing, once you say, I need help, it's a lot easier.
Jason?
Yeah, it's I fought it. I mean, just because, I mean, you're not supposed to have mild cognitive impairment so young. I mean, and I get out. I mean, when people find out that, even my family, even extended members of my family, they find out and they're like, well, you're too young. There's no way you have anything like that. And so for me, it's kind of been a lot of avoidance and a lot of, but I think it's been much better since I've learned to accept it and learn to that this is what I got and I got to live with it.
Nick?
Actually, the same thing, and as I said last year about God gives me today, and I have a lot of things in my life, do you know what I mean? And I do the best that I can. I try to stay active, eat healthy. Maybe I don't go to bed at the right time, but it's good. And I like to stay active, and like I said, for me, walking the dog, going to the gym, doing everything that I know, staying in touch with people, that's really good. And I'm lucky because I have a good family and a good spouse, and so it's really good. And don't get your head big over the spouse.
Well, Peggy and I want to thank Art, Jason, Lucy, and Nick for sharing
Thank you for having us.
your stories and your experiences, especially with the diagnosis that you've received. And in our next segment, we will discuss the strategies that our guests are using to live their lives with brain changes. Welcome to the Vital Living series on dementia. Joining us are Art, Jason, Lucy, and Nick, along with Peggy Bargeman, who's an advocate for individuals with dementia. And in our first segment, we talked about how your journey began. So in our second segment, I'd like to learn a little bit more about how you're living day to day with your brain changes. How do you face the challenges of day-to-day life and strategize to live a positive, involved, active life? Let's go ahead and start with you, Art.
Well, I go to a workout 3 times a week, and my good friend Ricardo drives me there and waits and picks me up and returns me home. I don't drive as much as I used to, and I think most people are thrilled that I don't. And it's really a helpful hand, and it frees up my wife. So one of the things I've found is very important is having someone who can help you in daily necessities.
Jason?
Getting up is a big thing. I mean, getting up, being able to, have something to look forward to during the day, that day. Another thing with the Brain Fitness Club is like Art said, it gives my wife a break. So that helps us both. But I try to have something. I try to structure my week, or my wife and I both try to structure my week so that I have something that I'm looking forward to each day, or something that I have to get up for, a reason to get up. Just get going.
What about you? Go
And I
ahead.
was just going to say, people that don't understand the changes that you're experiencing may not understand what you just said means.
What I have is frontal temporal dementia, or frontal temporal syndrome is also what it's called. It strikes people much younger than Alzheimer's and other MCIs. But I get very lethargic, a lot of the personality changes that I spoke to earlier a wide range of changes, as far from higher temper to very lethargic, not really motivated to do much, and then just complete loss of willingness to live. I mean, to do anything. So it's definitely important to keep going and to keep looking for something and having a goal to get towards.
Now, we're mentioning some acronyms up here, MCIs. Can we talk a little bit about what that
I'm
stands
sorry.
for? No, that's okay.
Fine, mild cognitive impairment.
Okay.
So it's a diagnosis that says you're in the very early stages of having memory changes, but not changes significant enough to have the diagnosis of dementia. Okay. So it's very, very early, but I thought it was, thank you for explaining that, because that initiation is in your frontal lobe, and so when your get up and go isn't there, it's difficult. So thanks for sharing that.
Lucy, what are some challenges that you face, just waking up in the morning, daily life?
You know, I don't face a lot of problems now besides I can just put something there and reach out there and ask me where it is, and I know where I had it. I know I did, but I don't know what I've done with it. I know I don't know if they were trying to help me or what, but they keep bugging me. That's what I said. Don't you bug me about this thing. I don't know what's happened to it. And if you live long enough, you may have it. So pray God you never have it. Stop bugging me. You know?
I think something that you and I have had the experience of before, Lucy, is that because you use humor and you do so well, that there's times when you remind me, now Peggy, I'm having brain changes because it's so easy to forget that you're having brain changes because you do so well. So thanks for sharing that.
Nick, how do you find balance and maintain your autonomy on a daily basis?
Well, sometimes I break the rules, and like crossing the street and things like that. That's usually a no-no. And so, but Dan gracefully always makes sure that I have a Lyft or an Uber to get to where I want to go, which is usually to the gym, and I stay there for hours, and I commit the sin of vanity, and then and then when I come home, I feel really good. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that's good. I mean, and life is meant to be lived, and friends need to be involved. Family has to be contacted, and I wasn't doing really good with that recently. But after the time I had my journey, I realized the importance that I need to stay in contact with my siblings, do you know what I mean? And that makes me feel better, you know what I mean?
Now, I know there are challenges that all of you face. Can you identify maybe one particular challenge you'd like to share, Art?
My major challenge is pride, as many men go through of dealing with any difficulty. And to admit that I need help is not something a guy is used to. That's been my biggest obstacle.
Mine has just been accepting what I have, and accepting that it's not going to get better. It's not going to, that I need to work with it and do what I can. I've recently, since I've been kind of encouraged by what I've done at the Brain Fitness Club. I've recently started to write a book because there's not a whole lot about what I have about FTS or FTD. And there's not a whole lot from the standpoint, when I first was diagnosed, we looked for everything, and there's a few PhDs and doctors that went out, and they wrote books about it, but they have no idea what it's like to be actually somebody with it. So I'm trying to write it from that point of view, and that's helped immensely. That has helped. I mean, that's been incredible help.
And I think when people think of dementia, they think of Alzheimer's disease, and they think it's all about memory loss. And Jason, you've touched on a little bit. For you, it's not just.
It's not. Yeah, I mean, memory loss is definitely a big component, and it's more memory recall. I may not remember it today, but I may remember it tomorrow. But mine is an overall. It's the frontal and the temporal regions of the brain. So it's personality changes. It's basically it makes it difficult to interact like I normally would have, you know, and so beyond, you know, that makes it even more frustrating with the, you know, when the memory component comes in and when I can't remember something. But like I said, I think for me, writing the book, you know, just working on, you know, if I get really frustrated one day, I'll go and just write 3 or 4 pages on my book, and I mean, it may take a couple of years through, you know, whatever to write it, but it's therapeutic more than anything for right now.
Nick, I don't want to leave you out. What are some of the challenges that you encounter on a daily basis?
On a daily basis, like I'm walking with the dog's leash in my hand, and I walk around with it, and I say, where's that leash? And then I realize later that I have it in my hand, do you know what I mean? And things like that. And that happens a lot, but it doesn't bother me. It's because at the end of the day, I still have the dog to walk.
Now, I imagine also the challenges is that for a number of you, your diagnosis ended your career, correct? Jason, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was able to retire from the Navy with a longevity after almost 22 years. And then I was a contractor, but I was only able to do that for about 1.5 years before, and we didn't know what it was. We didn't, I mean, we had no idea. We found out a couple of years, you know, 4 or 5 years later, but I just knew that it just wasn't happening. I mean, there was just no way I could continue. I was working intelligence. I couldn't remember, you know, I was forgetting everything. I was getting easily upset over different things, wasn't getting along with people that I was working with, wasn't really motivated, you know, just all sorts of different, it just was getting way too hard. And so, yeah, I mean, at 41, I retired. I mean, I basically retired and took you know, so now it's been hard. I mean, that's been a big change, because I went from working, you know, 12 to 14-hour days, 6 days a week for 21 years, and now all of a sudden it's like, you know, cut off.
Changed. Yeah.
And it's been difficult.
Yeah. Art?
Yeah, you know, the basic thing that I went through was I had a real startling awareness of my disease as it was progressing. I was going to take a shower and I fell through the shower door and glass shattered. And fortunately, a good friend of mine, Ricardo, came and helped my wife lift me up and get me out of there. And that's when it dawned on me, no, you've got something going on. And before that, I was able to deny it. And that's not a river in Egypt. It's a big deal.
Yeah. And you worked for UCF, correct?
Yes, I worked for UCF, and I was training for the government for 30 years. And you know, the good news is, and let me share some good news because we're talking about problems, I'm still able to do short-term workshops. And so I do hour workshops around the county and through different churches. And so I'm blessed and very fortunate that I'm still able to do that. So.
Now, Nick, I know as we talk about all this, obviously there are a lot of different people in your lives who are helpful. Can you share with us, you know, is their helpfulness, is it appreciated? Do you sometimes feel like you want to just do it yourself?
No, I like people to take care of me. No, not at all. I'll take all the help I can get. And all the travel I can get too.
Yeah. What about you, Jason?
I use the Links Access to come to Brain Fitness Club.
Okay.
We live out in Lake Nona, so it's quite a ways, but that is an invaluable service. That is something I really appreciate. And I do find, I mean, but again, it goes back to a lot of people look at it as, you know, I'm too young to have some kind of, I don't have Alzheimer's. I must not have Alzheimer's because I'm not in my 60s or 70s.
Right.
So that's all they see. But yeah, Links is definitely a very good program.
And I know, Art, you talked about your wife of
Yes.
46 years.
Yes.
A huge help to you?
Huge help. You know, one of the things is she encourages me not to get down on myself. It's easy to become depressed and to think about what you can't do, but to be reminded of what you are able to do and how much I mean to her is really helpful.
Okay.
I wanted to go back to what you said earlier and maybe ask it
Sure,
again.
go ahead, yeah.
And that is, Have you ever had the experience where somebody helps too much, where you want to do it yourself and they helped you and you went, let me do this myself?
Well, we know Nick likes the help, so
Yeah,
let's see.
I think there's been times when Nick hasn't liked the help all the time, though. Making, like, appointments being made when you'd rather make your own appointment, things like that. Is that ever,
Well,
maybe not now, in the past, have you felt?
No, in the past probably, but Dan takes care of everything because I wouldn't remember anything about an appointment. And so he really takes care of everything. He truly does.
Okay.
Yeah. There are times when my wife will want to push too much or want to do too much or finish my sentences and it kind of gets frustrating. When she sees me getting frustrated, she tries to step in and do something, and sometimes that's not what the best thing in the world is. It's just I got to fumble through it and get over it.
My wife wrote out this script for things for me to say.
Okay.
And I'm doing fine without it.
Yeah, you are. You're doing fantastic.
Thank you, honey.
Well, Art, Jason, Lucy, and Nick, thank you very much for sharing your stories and how you're living daily life with your brain changes. And in our final segment, we will hear more advice from our guests. Alzheimer's disease and related dementias are among the fastest growing chronic diseases in the United States. And joining us for this final segment are Art, Jason, Lucy, and Nick, where they're going to share their advice on how communities and individuals can create dementia-friendly communities in which to live. So let's start off, Nick, I'm going to start with you. What are some of the resources that you've been able to benefit from here in Central Florida?
In Central Florida, related to my health. Okay, related to my health is my the resources that I go to the gym all the time, and that keeps me active, and I know that I do that, and then I do the Zumba every day to make sure that the blood's getting hit to my brain, and I do that, and then I try to stay in I always try to reach out to friends and family, and I've made a bigger choice to do that recently, and I like it, do you know what I mean? Because we all live far away. And but for me, life is good, and I really mean that. I mean, life is really good, and it's all right. The only thing I have to do is I have to make sure that no one knows that I crossed the street.
Okay. No one will. We won't tell.
Nobody will ever know.
Okay. Jason, what about you? What are some of the resources that you have found incredibly
As I mentioned
helpful?
before, Access Links has given me some more freedom as far as being able to, not have to pay $50 to go. We're out in Lake Nona, so if I want to come into Orlando or something, I don't. It's a good resource. I've also. The Brain Fitness Club has been good. Unfortunately, I think that there's a stigma of people with memory loss or with cognitive impairment, that they're babbling idiots and they're not. I think, and I'm not saying everybody, but I'm saying that a lot of people think of Alzheimer's or they think of dementia and they think Alzheimer's, somebody who can't remember where they are, who they are. But I think that there's people that that there are a lot of people like me. Younger people even, younger than me and my age, that it's not just an age-related problem, or it's not, and it's not always obvious from the outside.
Sure.
But it's something that, we need some help maybe, but if you ask for it, but we don't always need to be held by the hand and guided around.
Now, are there resources that you would think you'd benefit from that you aren't finding, or the resources that you're using that are helpful?
No, one major one that I'm using and have been is Florida Hospital has a Parkinson's workout 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 11 o'clock, and it's wonderful. Andrea leads us through all sorts of stretching exercises that push you beyond limits, and but it's good to have that push. So I found that extremely helpful.
Peggy, what are some of the resources you want to make sure that our audience is aware of, in addition to what they've spoken about, or in explaining those a little bit further so they can know what's out there?
Yeah, you know, when we talk about when Brain Fitness Club was started back in 2007, so we've been around for 11 years, there was really no resources for the individuals in the earlier stages. Now, some things that are available is the Orlando Museum of Art has the Arts the Spark program, which once a month they do gallery tours for individuals with memory impairment. Central Florida Community Arts has the Musical Minds Choir, that is a choir for people with memory impairment and their care partners to sing together, and they've done just wonderful things. Our community has grown to now have 2 memory disorder clinics, so there's the support of them, and I know I'm missing a lot of other things.
Well, one of the things that I have found through Brain Fitness Club is we had last semester was my first semester. We had a day when UCF physical therapists came in and did a balance test.
I remember
And through that, I was picked up for a program that they have called the I Move Lab.
Okay.
And I go twice a week. It's completely free. And I work with a PhD doctor, or a doctor and two doctoral students, 2 PT doctoral students. And I use a cane, but they have worked, it's just my balance is, after only 3 months, my balance is tremendously better than it was. And they learned something from me, and I definitely am learning a lot from them. And so it kind of but stuff like, things like that, things that opened up through, and then the other UCF students that come in once a week and do the cognitive therapy, that's also been.
Right. And you talked a little bit about the stigma, Jason. Lucy, what's your feeling about what people think about brain changes and dementia?
I don't let it bother me. People may let it bother them. Don't let it bother you. Because I always say, it's a saying of my old grandparents, you see today, you don't see tomorrow. Tomorrow, you may be much worse than my today. Never make fun of anyone with their illness, their shortcoming, because you don't know what your tomorrow will bring. Help them if you can, and if you can't help them, leave them alone. But don't laugh at them, don't make fun at them.
Yes.
Because wherever they get their problem from, it's a lot left there. Just pray you don't get it. So as you go along life's way, do all the good you can to all the people you can, just as long as you can.
Very good advice.
Katie, I thought of another resource that slipped my mind earlier, and that is the Memories in the Making program that the Alzheimer's Association offers, which is a watercolor class for painting for individuals. And I know I'm missing other things, but the good news is that there's more and more things available. We just need to get the word out. Yes. Nick and myself serve on the what's called DCCI, Dementia Care and Cure Initiative, trying to work on better ways to serve individuals with dementia in our community. So there are things coming, and it's good news.
Nick, what advice would you have for those?
I want to tell you this, that there was a man, and I say I do Zumba every day, and the man said to me, you should know these steps by heart. And I took him and I said, come here. Like, I'm doing the best I can. Do you know what I mean? I said, I have cognitive issues, and I don't need you to tell me that I should know all the steps by now. Do you understand? I'm doing the best I can here today. Do you know what I mean? And that's all I need from life.
Jason, what advice would you have for others who are living with
Stay
dementia?
active. I mean, that's the key. Is you got to stay active. Like somebody was saying, I think it was Peggy was saying that at the beginning of the Brain Fitness Club, the person that started it said they weren't getting, they could feel themselves draining away by watching daytime TV. And the big thing is just stay active, get out in the community, or even if it's just walking your dog. I mean, I got a dog. She, I like Nick. I walk her whether she wants to. Well, it's hard to walk if she doesn't want to walk, but. But just getting out, just having something to look forward to, not sitting there feeling, I personally spent a couple of years sitting there feeling sorry for myself. Mm-hmm. And it took, a complete breakdown for me to kind of look, turn around and say, hey, I need to be doing something. Mm-hmm. I'm just, I'm too young to be wasting away. I'm not that far gone. I'm not so far gone that I can't do something to help. And so I've just been trying to do that.
Art, what would be your advice?
I would say stay active and stay informed. I find myself reading more and more articles, and there's more and more coming out every single day about new improvements in medication or different therapies and things we can do to help ourselves. And I think that's really a mainstay of staying active as long as we live.
Mm-hmm. And Peggy, as someone who knows all four of these individuals and works with many others with brain changes, what would be your advice to the community?
And I have to echo what they're saying is stay active, personally, staying active, and then have a community that supports that activity. Yes. And I really want to applaud Nick for your last story you told on somebody that said you should know this already, and being willing to stick up for yourself and say, hey, wait a minute, this is what's going on.
And now I'll admit that I'm not 33 anymore, but I'm getting there. And I do stand up for myself. And I thought that was the rudest thing to say to anybody. I thought, you don't even know me. Right. See what I mean? Like, you don't even know me. And I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. When I started doing this work 21 years ago, the people that I worked with really asked me to get out there and speak for them, because 21 years ago, you wouldn't have someone like Nick standing up for themselves. Mm-hmm. There was some shame involved. There was, society had some negative views towards anybody with dementia and didn't understand at all that you could live life with a memory impairment or other cognitive impairments. So I think we have to applaud all of you for what you're doing. Yep. I wanted to bring up one more thing that I'm seeing in this group, and that is the use of humor. I think we're seeing it, but can anybody comment on how important is it to you to keep humor?
It's totally, especially when people who want to do the right thing and do the oh so sorry, feel terrible for you. It amazes them when you crack a joke. Yeah. Why are you trying to be funny? Because it's life.
Yeah. So exercise and humor,
yes.
Correct? All right.
Yes.
Well, Art and Jason, Lucy and Nick, Peggy and I thank you for joining us for this three-part conversation talking about dementia. I hope that hearing from these guests will help you just understand a little bit more of what it is like to live with brain changes and how our community can continue to be supportive. And be sure to watch our companion show where we talk with caregivers.